It's so alluring to be a part of the channel. There's this view that I signed the contract with the TSD, the spigot turns on, and the orders just come flowing. And it's just a beautiful thing. It's manna from heaven, and it just, sales show up for no cost. I'm not gonna pay anything until the order shows up, and then I'm gonna pay this little commission. And so it's very enticing because customers want to purchase this way, and that's why there's such demand.
Welcome, everyone, to the Channel Standard Community Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and people shaping the future of the channel. I am your host, Eric Brooker, and I am thrilled to be with you. Today, I am joined by someone who has been instrumental in defining what the modern TSD looks like. He's a visionary leader, a relationship builder, and a name that has become synonymous with innovation in our space. Adam Edwards is my guest, the co-founder and CEO of Telarus. Joins us to talk about the company's remarkable journey from its humble beginnings back in 2002 to becoming one of the most recognized names in this industry. We'll explore the decisions that shaped Telarus, the value of private equity, and Adam's perspective on where this ever-evolving channel is headed next. Whether you're a supplier, an advisor, or simply passionate about the channel, this conversation is packed with insight, authenticity, and heart. Let's dive in. Adam Edwards, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Eric. Always good to be talking with you.
So it's exciting. We're meeting just a couple of days before we're going to grab lunch. Some of this is stuff that I know people ask me from time to time. I'll start with the most basic because I heard an interesting one the other day. Is it Telarus or Telarus?
That's a good question. It's really geographic dependent, Eric. You go, what I've learned is in Texas, it is Telarus, and they are not going to change the pronunciation. We in Utah call it Telarus, and that's what we've always called it, is Telarus. But we've also heard Telarus.
I heard Telarus the other day.
That's right. So if we ever go through a name change, my only requirement will be that it is universally pronounced the same way.
It's like Coke and soda and pop and all that. It depends where you are in the world.
That's right. Hey, we're happy for people to pronounce it anyway.
As long as they're working with you, right?
That's right.
Talk to me a little bit about the origin story. Again, this is something I've heard over the years. I find how all of you got in the industry really fascinating. But what's the origin story? How did you get into the business to begin with?
Yeah, we were kind of the oddballs. Most people got in the industry because they had some sort of connection. At the time, it was long distance. They were selling long distance or calling cards, or they had come from a provider like Cable and Wireless or Quest, which is now Lumen. And they all had this technological background, the sales background. We did not. The origin really is Patrick and I have been lifelong friends. We were literal Boy Scouts together, played on the same football teams, college roommates. And he said, look, I'm selling long distance, making a recurring commission. You should do this with me. And I said, recurring commission? Whatever it takes, I'm into that. So I was really sold on the comp model before we figured out what the technology actually was. And arguably, I'm still not great at the technology, but love the model.
So the part of the origin story, I think, had you in a closet doing some accounting work. I don't remember the exact story, but I'm curious, if it wasn't telecom, if it wasn't technology, if you didn't start a TSD, what was the master plan? What were you going to do?
Well, my route was the CFO route. I was a controller in a business. I became their head of finance, and that was my route, was the financial route. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but it really took Patrick, who is the true entrepreneur of the two of us, to say, hey, I've tried something out. It works. You should do this with me. That's really what got us started. He proved the model because he was doing it on the residential side and said, we should start this on a commercial basis. And that's what got us going, was really him.
So I remember I was with a company many, many years ago, and I had one of my sales reps walk in. I was the VP of sales and marketing, and a guy walked in. He says, we're real close to signing a deal with Telarus, and I just can't get it over the finish line. I said, I don't know who these guys at Telarus are, but let's get it done. And that's when I first picked up the phone. But back then, let's say 15 years ago, there were more people that identified as a master agent, now TSD. The market looked a lot different. I would say there's three, maybe five TSDs in the marketplace today. What separates Telarus from the rest of the pack today?
I think if you look at our historical roots, what we started doing, we made a decision a long time ago. Were we a software company? Because we were building a lot of software early on to automate and create tools for advisors. We were also selling just to pay the bills. I was out selling. And the fact that we succeeded is a miracle because I wasn't very good at it. Another testament to Patrick for generating enough leads that even a blind squirrel was able to get a nut. We decided that, we're better at helping people than we are doing any of these other things. And why don't we do that? And that has really been our claim to fame, has been the passion for helping an advisor. We understand, early on, we understood the end user is not our customer. And when we made that decision 20 years ago, everything became clear. We made the decision, we're not a technology company. We're going to use technology, but we are all about these small businesses. And everything you've seen us try or fail has been in that vein of how do we help these folks be more successful? Can we do their accounting work for them? Can we help with their marketing? And what we found is there are things that we can do uniquely at scale. And that's where if you talk to anyone on the team about what we're working on today, you're always going to find that there's this passion for the advisor's business and for their success, whether they're selling, technology or whether they're selling number two pencils. Our mission has always been how to create value for them. And that's when you pull back all the layers, that's what you see.
One of the areas that was, and I think it's nuanced, is this Telarus Capital program. I saw something on LinkedIn the other day. A mutual friend of ours, Ruben, invested in the program. Give us just the high level overview of what that program does, because I think, to your point just now, that's an investment back into the partner to grow and scale their business however they see fit, right?
Yeah, I think it's really misunderstood. There's so many options now, which is wonderful. 10 years ago, there were zero options. For an advisor to get financing, walk into the bank and they'd ask, where's your invoices? What invoices? The money just shows up. Yeah, that's not a real business would be the answer. And so nobody got any sort of financing unless you put your house up as collateral.
Yeah.
You personally guaranteed it. We were in the same boat. And now we're in this phase where we can do those things. We started lending to partners. But what would happen after 3 years, the loan comes due and they say, you're killing me. I just invested in my business. I'm finally paying back these salespeople I hired. Now you're going to collect for me? Okay, we'll extend. And we had to figure out a better way of how can we capitalize these advisors that makes it painless for them, that gives them all the upside. That's another defining factor. It's not a haircut on the future. It gives them all the upside and also keeps us unbiased. So we are not taking equity in advisors saying we favor this advisor over that advisor, but we can maintain our role as TSD to them. And that's where we came up with the capital program is we actually evolved our way into it. We'll buy cash flow from, we won't buy specific accounts. We will buy rights to a certain amount of cash flow. And what we want is a very minor piece of cash flow. We don't want to impact their business. We want them to invest in their business. And also, if they want to take money off the table, we found, a lot of people have FOMO of everyone's selling their business. I don't want to sell, but I do, want to take some off the table. I want to fund my retirement, all these things. Well, we can finally do that through the capital program. We've done quite a few of these where advisors are able to do this, maintain full equity ownership of their business, decision-making control, and not haircut themselves on future deals so their earning potential is still maximized.
I definitely think it's nuanced. I think to your point, there was a lot of confusion when Telarus Capital came about. I think the nuanced piece of Ruben, as an example, still owns his business in its entirety. One of the other things that came to the market was this idea that private equity investment VC would enter the market to the tune of, I think we're now in the billions of dollars. Talk to me about what made you think it was time as a business owner to partner with Columbia Capital.
We've been very fortunate on our journey to have talented people who could figure things out, who could find a way. But what we also knew was that there was going to be a roll-up, that TSDs were going to need to get big. It's just like an airline or if you're running a railroad, those are high fixed cost, low variable cost. When you've got that kind of scenario, scale matters. Scale is what ultimately wins out because you're going to get a lot of value to your customer, and your incremental cost for the next widget is going to be very small. That's what a railroad does. I mean, their ability to carry freight from one side of the country to the other so far surpasses the economics around truck or air travel or anything else, but it's because they did the work on those tracks. It's the same thing with a TSD. A lot of code being written, a lot of engineers, a lot of personnel to give value, but you've got to have scale. So we went shopping. We felt like we have got to have some expertise, and we just don't have it. And we'd like to get the backing. We don't need to take money off the table. What we need is a great partner that helps us do this. That's why we did a minority deal. When Columbia came along, we went shopping for quite a while. I actually gave up at one point. This is probably 7 years ago. Then we met Columbia and found that, hey, this is a partner we can grow with, who is willing to take a minority interest and could be an incredible partner. And it's proven to be true. And that roll-up has taken place where there were, 20 TSDs or so, and now there's, a very limited number as that roll-up took place. And I would say overall goodness, like the value you get out of a TSD today, the benefits you get from them, the resources provided, are so far superior to what was available 5-10 years ago. And part of that is because of consolidation.
Talk to me about some value that the TSD brings today that they maybe didn't bring 5-6 years ago.
You bet. I would say, if you look back far enough, it was, hey, we're an insurance product. That's really how TSD started. It was an insurance product. And Patrick was one of the victims of being cut off. He had a little agency. This is how he proved the model. Had a little agency, got cut off by the provider. They just stopped paying him. And they made him chase. And he went and he got a judgment against them, couldn't collect on the judgment. So he started rolling his business under a TSD and found that there's protection there. And that's honestly one of the beauties of the model as an advisor. I don't have to sell this one brand every month for the next 20 years. I can sell what my customer needs. I can align myself to the customer's needs, not to the supplier's needs. And the supplier's job to make sure their product is accommodating my customer and making sure it fits. So the TSDs have enabled that environment. And I would say it's because of that base value of that insurance product. But beyond that, there was maybe some escalation, maybe some pricing. You look at today, what's going on. There is education in these new product sets. There is no one person can wrap their head around all the products being sold, the nuance between the suppliers. It's just not possible. The vetting, the sorting, the grading of each of these suppliers, the education doesn't exist or didn't exist previously. You look at the tooling that's taking place now, the millions and millions of dollars poured into software to enable, so you know where my order is, what commission is due, was it paid, was it short. The ability and the heft of TSDs now to be able to stand up for the rights of advisors. You would not believe the amount of time that we spend advocating for advisors when new executives come in. By the way, more scrutiny now than ever because it's such a meaningful component to a supplier's revenue. We are now under more scrutiny than ever of CFOs and CEOs going, what's this about? Why are we paying all this money every month? Should we be? Shouldn't we haircut this? Like, those are real conversations taking place that we are going out. And I didn't appreciate some of our predecessors' work on this, of how much they, stood up to suppliers and created a path for us. But we're doing that more than ever. So I would say that protection element, the education element of suppliers specifically, is greater than ever. Financing is another one that was not available 5-10 years ago, and it is today.
Talk to the new suppliers. There are a lot of suppliers. I speak to new suppliers daily, if not weekly. One of the most common questions that I get is, how long does it take? How long is it going to take for me to sign an agreement with Telarus and get to a point where there's an ROI, or I start to see, I'll call it meaningful revenue? Is this a 3-month roadmap? In fact, I'll tell you, I just started working with someone in recent weeks. And the question I got on Friday is, when do we start seeing revenue? Now, I talk about these things, and in fact, you'll appreciate this. Back in the early days of telecom, we used to have people sign waivers. We're not covering your long distance. We need you to know that we're not going to manage your long distance. So if you get hacked or whatever, we're not responsible. I'm thinking of having my clients start to sign a waiver that they acknowledge that it can take X period of time, because 3 months in, they all want to know when the revenue's coming. So how would you answer that question to a new supplier?
I think it's so alluring to be a part of the channel. There's this view that I signed the contract with the TSD, the spigot turns on, and the orders just come flowing. And it's just a beautiful thing. That it's manna from heaven, and it just, sales show up for no cost. I'm not going to pay anything until the order shows up, and then I'm going to pay this little commission. And so it's very enticing because customers want to purchase this way, and that's why there's such demand. By the way, what a wonderful problem to have. 10, 15 years ago, we were knocking on their doors saying, hey, can we please sell your product? And they wanted nothing to do with us. So the fact that there is such a backlog now and such a demand is wonderful. It's a wonderful problem to have. But you're right, the expectation of what it's going to take is really misplaced. What it really takes is at least 18 months. It takes a dedicated commitment from the executive team. It takes someone with channel experience. By the way, when I say channel, I mean this channel, not the other channel. I would rather have someone with no channel experience than someone from the other channel, because they have these preconceived ideas of how we operate, and you've got to break that down before you can build up in this channel. So I would say a veteran from this channel is critical to the education, the coaching of all the elements of, you have got to go out to the advisor and help them with the sale, give them a sale, prime the pump a little bit. So why would they risk their customers' relationship and confidence in them on something that doesn't work? Maybe help them with something new that's low risk for them. I don't think suppliers understand what a big ask it is to, hey, just try this on for size, when I'm going to risk that relationship that I've had for 20 years. That's a big ask.
Well, one of the things that you just brought up, I think, isn't spoken about enough. This idea of giving them a sale. I think, as someone that comes from the supplier side of the house, my immediate feedback 10 years ago, why would I give them an order? That's their job.
Yes,
But
yes.
I know at Choose Your Partner, I know that a partner is going to call me back if I leave them a voicemail saying, hey, I'm trying to get a hold of you. I've got an opportunity. It's about whatever, name it, $15,000 a month in revenue. And rather than giving them the order, giving them the opportunity to work the process with you so they know how you as a supplier operate. They get to know you and your products.
Yeah, I think if there was more of that, there would be that you get over that learning curve faster. But so much of it is building confidence in an advisor to take the risk of putting their customers in front of something, and that's a big ask. Therefore, it takes time. Habit building just takes time, and I think most people underestimate how much time it's going to take.
One of the statistics that I believe you gave on stage at this year's Telarus Partner Summit was that when I got in this business about 15 years ago, the data said something in the neighborhood of 20% of businesses acquired technology through some sort of channel. That number now, I think, is north of 75, 76%. What do you see next in this industry? Do you see that continuing to go up? Do you see, we got to plateau at some point, but what do you see next in this industry, and how relevant does the channel remain over the next few years?
I think when you look at the advisor channel, too many people look at it as a procurement channel. And while that's what it appears to be on its face, when you actually run the numbers, you find that it's not just a procurement, it's a customer lifetime value channel, in that that customer is going to stick around a lot longer because the advisor sticks by them to help them through issues, to escalate for them, to wave their arms and say, hey, Mr. Supplier, you're dropping the ball here and they're about to move. Let's go fix this quickly. And we just had one of our largest suppliers on record run the data. You'd be surprised it took them this long to actually get the data together and run it and say, wouldn't you know it? The customers that went through the advisor channel stayed much longer than the customers acquired through direct. And of course, we know that, but now they have conviction because they have the data. And the reason for that is because the model is so well aligned to the customer outcome. This model is going to continue to grow over time. That doesn't mean other channels won't as well. I think as innovation takes place, and we are in a moment of innovation with AI, it's creating so much more innovation. There's ideas that, well, everyone's just going to create their own software now because they can just vibe code it. Well, that's actually not true. Software creates a very specific framework for very specific problems, and there's going to continue to be this wave of innovation. That's where the channel succeeds. where there's fragmented companies, there are choices to be made, and there's confusion. The channel thrives on vetting these and presenting them to customers and helping them along the way, not just procure, but to have a great lifetime value for that supplier.
So we talk a lot about, you and your peers talk a lot about all the upside to the channel, and I think reasonably so. But what would you say is the biggest obstacle in the channel today?
Now, do you mean obstacle for from a supplier's perspective, from a channel growth, or
Let's talk about it from a supplier's perspective.
I think from a supplier perspective, it depends on how they're viewing the channel. I think part of the challenge of supplier is, hey, I've got this direct team here, and I've got to align with the channel, and if I believe my direct team because I talk to them all the time, and they have a foothold in this customer, and therefore I'm going to push the channel out, but then they're going to hold the customer hostage, and they can register it somewhere else, and take that from me, but I can't pursue the opportunity, so they're just blocking me out. I think there's frustration there when you don't truly understand how to work that channel overlap, that channel conflict. I would say is the biggest challenge for those that have both a channel and a direct. Those that are pure channel don't deal with that as much. They deal maybe with partner to partner conflict, but I think sometimes they feel a little bit that their hands are tied in being able to fully pursue customers through the model when they have a direct side. Now, when you can work through that, when you can build out a framework for channel conflict to maximize your growth in the channel and maximize on the direct side, you can really get away from that.
What advice would you give suppliers in terms of preparing for what's coming? There's a lot changing. The biggest constant right now in this industry is change. What advice would you give to suppliers relative to what's coming next?
The challenge suppliers have, I think, is gaining mind share. An advisor can only keep so many things in their mind, present in their mind. And once they do, they continue to go until it doesn't work anymore. They're going to lead with that. That is one of the strengths to the model, is they can offer so many things. It's also one of the detriments, and that advisor is going to depend on getting current information. That's largely what the TSDs are working on, is how do we vet, sort, and grade these different these different suppliers in what they do, where they're doing well, where they're not doing well. And we do that through tools, through engineering. And the challenge for a supplier is, how do we get the information out? Because the fact is, you have to pull through distribution. You can't just put it on the shelf and hope. It doesn't work that way. In fact, one of the best ways we've found is as they will go to advisors directly, we talked about earlier, help them sell a deal, help them get conviction. That advisor can't help but to tell other people, to evangelize, and advisors will get wise to that. But one of the things, if I were in a supplier's shoes, the thing I would be focused most on is, how do I get the word out? How do I supply these tools that TSDs have with accurate and timely information? How do I supply education to their people as they are talking and seeing a lot of these opportunities first as the advisor brings them in? How am I educating advisors and getting their mind share? There's I think a lot of questions being put around events and why do we go to events, and isn't this just a waste? Well, the fact is, you've not only got to get them educated on the technology, more importantly, you've got to build a basis of trust.
Yes.
Of, do I know these people? Will they stand behind this product when things go south? Because they always go south. And do I know them? Am I familiar with them? And therefore, they're going to be top of mind and be someone I can trust. That's what I'd focus on as a supplier.
Talk to me about what you see coming next for the TSDs. I know you've gone on record as saying there's going to be continued consolidation. What do you think that looks like in the TSD space?
There's no question. I look a lot of times at the analogs of the industry. If you look at financial advisory, if you look at insurance brokerage, very similar models. And they're very similar models that have evolved. You've got the aggregated advisor. Look at some of these aggregators who have bought advisors, and they're creating a bigger version of that with a much larger staff and capabilities. And then the TSD will always be around for the independent. What I see the TSD doing is continuing to invest in tools and enablement to where it's going to be very hard to run your business whether you're either not on a TSD platform or you're not on some sort of advisor roll-up, because you need those resources and access to suppliers to run your business. So from a TSD standpoint, what you can expect is a lot more tools for discovery, for enablement, for running your business. We refer to them internally as both business enablement and sales acceleration. And we're going to continue to see a lot more productivity tools come out around those topics.
Couple more questions as we start to come to the end. What advice would you give someone getting into the channel today?
If it were someone starting an advisory service, I would say it's very easy to look at the successful ones. There's this survivorship bias of, it's easy, I'm smarter than that guy. Like, I can do this. And the truth is, it is a lot harder than it looks. What we find the common factors to be are, number one, far and away, tenacity. Someone who just won't give up. They get punched in the face and they get back up and they just keep going. And what you find is it always takes longer than projected, and the sales take longer, and the commission arrival takes longer. Now, TSDs can help with that with financing resources, but what they can't do is put customers in front of you. That's another factor that an advisor has got to have, of that stream of opportunities coming in. However it is, we see so many different ways, whether it's door knocking or cold calling, or maybe you hired a lead generation service, or maybe you have a Rolodex from a past career that you can bring in and bring multiple people in. The other tools are available, the resources, the engineering, the tools, the suppliers. There's so much that can be done for you, but people are not going to put someone in the seat for you, and they've got to be able to do that. So I would say is, expect your revenues to be half and your expenses to be double. And you probably have a pretty good runway for success.
There's a lot of TAs and strategists selling their business or retiring, I should say. How can we as an industry do a better job? I don't know if you talk about this in leadership meetings, but how do you attract the new trusted advisor to the space?
So there are a lot of different ways we see them coming in. And by the way, I view that as a very positive thing. The fact that people can retire, this was not an opportunity 5-10 years ago. Yeah. It was, hey, hopefully the attrition doesn't eat through it too fast, and we'll see how it ends up. But the fact that people can sell their businesses today is a wonderful recruiting tool, because we can now represent that, hey, there's a great opportunity for you to build value for you and your family in this business model. That wasn't true 5+ years ago. You couldn't point to that. And now you've got a lot more people looking to this as a viable way to build a business and to build value for themselves and their family. So we view it as a very good thing. Recruiting, though, has always been the lifeblood of the industry. Getting new advisors in, helping them grow, and that hasn't changed. We see them coming through the front page. They're seeking us out. We find them in trade shows. We find them from suppliers. We find them just in the local community as we find someone adjacent to this industry. But they're coming from lots of walks of life. We can help them. We can teach them, but we can't provide the few things we just talked about. The tenacity and the opportunity flow. They've got to be able to have that.
All right, last question, and the one I think everyone's waiting for. What is next for Telarus?
Well, my guess is you're hinting at, that seems that the topic that everyone wants an answer to. And the challenge is this. I answered this question internally a year and a half ago, which is someone was saying, hey, there's news out there, there's big M&A going on, and we're a part of it. Is my job in jeopardy? And the problem is, if I respond to that every time, the moment I don't respond to it, it then becomes confirmation of there's definitely something happening. And so we try not to comment on anything. My advice to people is this: write down the rumor you heard and the person you heard it from. Because you will end up with a list, and I think a very good list of who has good information and who doesn't. And I think what you'll find is most of your friends don't have great information. These rumors tend to get momentum themselves. And we found the rumors before we acquired TCG, before we acquired Chorus, or any of those other TSDs we acquired. There are many different rumors of who is going to acquire whom, and those are going to continue on. What I do believe is there will absolutely be consolidation. I think everybody views themselves today as an acquirer, and that will play out over the next couple of years. I don't think it's going to be, in the next weeks or months, but over the next several years, there will absolutely be consolidation. Like I said, the model demands it. High fixed cost, low variable cost, you will have consolidation. It'll come down to about 2 or 3. And I think that's net positive for advisors in terms of the value they get. But as far as current rumors, I think those same rumors have been circling for about 2 years now. So my guess is they'll circle for another couple of years as well.
It's interesting because they seem to be the same rumors over and over and over again. I think I've gotten to a point where at this point they go in one ear and out the other, and we'll all wake up one day and hear that some of them have come true or none of them have come true, and there's still consolidation, which I think is the message.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right.
Adam Edwards, it was an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Eric, always good to chat with you. Thanks for what you do for the channel, for educating, for growing, and for helping suppliers be successful.
Thank you.